Think about the most important decision you're trying to make in your life right now. Should you take the new job? Is this girl, Sarah, that's working for you for the last 6 months, working out, or is it time to fire her? Is it time to take a step away from the company that you spent the last decade pouring in blood, sweat, and tears to build it where it's at today because there's something else in the future of your career that you're considering? What makes a great leader is an effective decision maker. Now, a lot of you guys know my background is in video and film production, and I've had the opportunity to work on feature films in my life. And I was directing a feature film one time, and I remember sitting there, and it was when we were moving scenes or moving sets or going to our next setup, which is where the most action is taking place behind the scenes. Everyone's moving lights, they're moving cameras, we're going to the next area, the next location. And I'm sitting there, I'm standing in the middle of the room surrounded by dozens of filmmakers, and I just have one team after another walking up to me and asking me questions. Where should we put the lights for this scene? What kind of camera angles or movements do we want for this scene? And in that moment, as the leader, as the creative leader of this project, it was my job to be an effective decision maker. On the other end of the spectrum, some of the most painful times in people's lives is when they don't have the ability to make a decision. Maybe they're in a situation where they have a tyrant in their life that's making decisions for them, and that's awfully painful. Or maybe like me, you decided to go on a decade-long existential crisis to figure out the meaning of life. And while you're reading ancient scripts and studying science and diving into philosophy, I was interviewing scholars and teachers and professors and asking them all the deepest questions about life. But during that time, I was in a bit of existential angst, which brought me into a position of being crippled and not really being able to make decisions, even simple ones. You can even ask my wife during that season of life. I wasn't a very good co-leader with her and our family because even the simplest decisions I wasn't able to make. The way that I describe it metaphorically is like I felt like I was standing in a field surrounded by big circle targets with bullseyes in the middle. And it's like I was looking to figure out which target to shoot at. But I had no idea. I couldn't even pick up the bow and arrow off the ground and begin to aim because I was directionless in my life. I was missing something. And the thing that I was missing was a deep understanding of what I truly value at the core of my being. I needed to figure out what was deeply meaningful to me, and that was the journey that I was on. And when I was able to figure out the answer to some of those questions, I was able to take a position of leadership, confidence, and decision-making once again. One of the most amazing things about value and figuring out what you value, what your team values, what your spouse values, what your boss values, is you can get laser focused with your decision making. Instead of spinning your tires and not knowing what to do or what choice to make or passing the buck off to somebody else because you don't want the responsibility of making the decision, you can be confident because you know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, let me give an example in my own life. So a few years ago, I sold my video production agency in Chicago, but when I was running the company, we every single month would have what we called innovation days, where we would go to the Golden Nugget, which was an American restaurant. We would get breakfast, we would get coffee, and we would just sit with the team, and we would discuss how awesome of a success we had on a video shoot or an area that we were struggling, but we knew we could improve it, and we would brainstorm on how to improve it. And I remember as I was learning as a leader about value and meaning, I presented that question to my team and I said, okay, as individuals, what do you value more than anything in your life and in this company? And their answer surprised me, and the reason that their answer surprised me was because it was different than my answer. All of my employees, their answer was they wanted personal financial success and financial success for our production agency. Now me, if you know anything about me, I am not that interested in money. I like money, I like nice things, I like going out to a nice dinner, but money is not a top priority value for me. I'm much more interested in freedom of my schedule, freedom to be creative, freedom to be able to experiment in the craft of public speaking or film production. So there was two different main values that the leadership, at least in myself, I was shooting for versus what my team was shooting for. But since we were able to have that discussion, we were able to understand one another better, and I was able to work towards getting them what they desired, and they were able to work towards me getting what I desired. Another really simple example is, let's say you're at a new job and you really want to do well in this job, and one of the ways to do well is to connect with your boss. And one of your teammates in the cubicle next to you tells you, hey, this is your boss's favorite hobby. Now that you know something that your boss values, you have a way to connect with them. You have a way to communicate with them. If it's golf, maybe you can even go out and play a round of golf with them and suck up to them and get that promotion you're looking for. The other thing that understanding what you truly deeply value and what the people around you value is it makes pain tolerable. Now, I don't know if you know this or not. I've personally experienced that life is stinking hard. And technically speaking, there's no real reason why it should ever get easy, and it often does not. But if you understand what is meaningful and important to you, if you understand what you value at the core, then pain becomes tolerable. It becomes worth bearing because there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And a fun thing, so every single day I lied, it's not every single day, but I try to read my daily reminders to myself every single day that are just kind of quotes that make me feel good about life, prep me up for the day, make me think about success. And one of those quotes is that it's not about finding relief in this life. It's about figuring out what you value and striving towards that value, because values are what gets you through the pain. The other benefit to values is it allows you to risk more because you know what you want. Now, everybody in their career and their life, you're going to hit some sort of plateau, and the only way to grow as an individually, personally, and professionally is going to be to jump off the cliff of that plateau in an attempt to fly. But you got to be able to jump. But no one's jumping for something they don't care about, something they don't value, something that's not meaningful to them. So if you figure out what your values are at your core, you can jump. If you figure out what your teammates' values are at their core, you can ask them to jump. Now, the question that we really need to ask ourselves is, how do we figure out what we truly value?